Hey everybody, I'm the Otaku artist, and welcome to the making of my Wolfie Magical Girl Transformation Animation, which is very much a mouthful. If you watched my channel update video, you would notice that I created a special animation to celebrate my return and to introduce my new persona/mascot to the channel, Wolfie. Well, that animation ended up being way more complicated than I thought it'd be, taking more than 6 months to create. So I thought I'd make a video explaining the process of that 40-second animation. So let's get into it, starting off with how I got the idea for it and the planning section of the animation. Let's go back months and months ago, back when I started work on my return to YouTube. I actually wanted to return to YouTube for a long time, but because of life stuff, it was delayed. Finally, after wanting to return for a while, I sat down, starting work on the script for my channel update, when a thought occurred to me. A terrible thought it turned out to be. I'm introducing a new persona, so why not spice things up with an animation? I love Sailor Moon and Magical Girl anime, so I thought that would be a good way to represent my change from my old design to the current one. I continued work on the script, recorded the dialogue, and then edited the video for the most part, leaving room at the end to include the animation when it was complete. I rewatched the famous Sailor Moon transformation video and thought to myself, sure, that looks easy. I can probably get that done in a few weeks, a month at most. Yeah, we know how that went. Funnily enough, I even had a backup plan where if I sketched it and thought it was too much work, I would just draw a picture of my old persona and my new persona over it and do like a transition showing the change. But you know how that went. I ended up making the full animation. So, I had an idea of how I'd edit the video, green screening my character in the background to get that classic effect in the original animation I was parodying, and thus started work on the sketching. According to my files, I started work on the sketch on August 8th, 2022, and it took me about 2 months to complete the fully sketched animation, finishing up on the 1st of October. The sketch process went pretty smoothly, and took a little longer than I expected it to take. Keep in mind, I wasn't working on this every day with my job and stuff. I worked on it little by little, so I expected that the line art such coloring wouldn't take too long to do if I worked on it more often. I expected that the sketched animation would take about a week or two, which was not very realistic, as the animation ended up being a lot more frames than I expected. The sketched version of the animation ended up being 421 frames, with me omitting sketching some parts of the animation, since I would just leave those parts to do in the line art stage or when editing. I do want to point out that because of YouTube being very cautious with anything looking like nudity, I tried not making the anatomy as realistic as it would actually look. And because of that, early frames don't look that great. Especially like looking at the backside of my character. It just does not look correct. You can definitely tell that my anatomy has improved a lot since beginning the animation though, if you compare early frames of the animation versus frames toward the end of the animation. Oh my god, the line art stage took a lot longer than anticipated. I started work on the line art on October 28th and finally finished the line art on December 6th. Now, normally line art shouldn't take this long, since line art is basically just tracing over sketches and fixing anatomy mistakes. I expected this part of the project would only take me about 1 to 2 weeks, like how the sketch portion would go. However, this took a little longer because there were some parts of the animation that I saved to do in the line art stage, which made it so while the sketch version was 421 frames, the line art version ended up being 457 frames. I I ended up coloring the beginning part of the animation as well, which took a little bit longer because the way I colored eyes in the animation took forever. I really like how the eyes turned out, but I will say I need to find some sort of happy medium between making eyes look really pretty, but also not taking forever to color. Now for the final part I drew in Fire Alpaca, which, by the way, isn't an animation program, just an art program. Everything in this animation is hand-drawn, by the way, like no tweening or anything that you see often used in animation memes, which is why it took so long. So, next time I make a complicated animation, maybe I should actually buy an animation program. Anyways, so, I started work on coloring the animation on the same day as I finished the line art, on December 6th, and finally finished it on February 15th. So, each part of the animation roughly took me about 2 months. And that was not even intentional, but it's kind of interesting how that turned out. Starting around the line art phase, and especially during the coloring phase, instead of working on this project every few days or every week or once in a while, I pushed myself to work on this pretty much every single day for a few hours. So it's surprising that even when pushing myself to working on this constantly every day, it didn't really change how long it took for each section of the animation to be completed. The final version of the animation before the editing process turned out to be 459 frames, 2 frames more than the line art version. Now we move on to the most difficult and frustrating part of the project. Now, when I started the editing process, I was already very frustrated and burnt out on working on this animation for so long. But the editing process made me even more upset. I started work on the first step of editing the animation on February 18th and finished the next day. This first step of the animation was coloring every background of the animation red and every image with the character blue. The reason for doing this is that I needed to green screen 2 different parts of the animation in the editing program, as 2 animated looping backgrounds would play at the same time. One in the background and one in the silhouette of the character. Now, that might not make too much sense with me just trying to explain that with words, so if you go back and watch the original Sailor Moon transformation segment, you might get a better understanding of what I'm referring to. After doing this very tedious part, on February 21st, I opened up HitFilm, the editing program I use, which is free by the way, very good editing program, and started compiling every frame together, stringing it together by hand. For every single frame, I had to manually adjust the frame rate so it would flow together nicely, which is very time consuming. Originally, I had planned to time the animation to the original music that played in the original version of the Japanese Sailor Moon anime, but then I kinda got worried that YouTube would get mad at me for copyright. So, I then found a cover version of the song, checked to make sure he was alright with others using his music in videos, and then started editing. The song I chose is by Vincent Lee and is in the description below. Check it out, the music is great! Then I found 2 free-to-use videos for the background and silhouette of Wolfie, which I also put in the description below. As I compiled the frames, I had to make sure the timing was correct, as well as adding some transitions and added animation in the editing process. This added more frames, so if you count the different layers and added animation edited, the finished animation turned out to be a little over 600 frames. However, even after editing it all together, the animation wasn't quite finished. I exported this version of the animation, and then begun the green screening process. Oh god, the green screening process. So, this part of the project made me so mad. I exported different versions of the animation so many times trying to get the green screening to work. but because of a few different factors, it wasn't working correctly. First, trying to figure out the layering of the animation was a bit complicated, and because some parts of the animation included red and blue, the green screening affected parts of the video that I did not want to green screen. Originally, the silhouette portion of the animation was supposed to have a looping, moving background that made the beginning of the animation make me look rainbowy. But after several tests, this turned out to be impossible to pull off since the colors included in the loop I was using were red and blue, the same colors that were being green screened. This ended up making parts of the looping video transparent, ruining the effect I was trying to pull off. After exporting the animation several times, with a total of 15 failed video attempts, I literally just gave up. I sat on my bed extremely frustrated, thinking that 6 months of work were for nothing, and that I wouldn't be able to achieve the effect that I wanted, and would have to go back to animating again, coloring every single frame individually for the moving rainbow effect on the character I wanted. After pouting, feeling upset, feeling like I was about to cry for a few minutes, panicking over the fact that I might have to recolor and reanimate the beginning portion of the animation, I then came to a realization that there was one more thing I could try. It wouldn't be exactly what I wanted, but it was close enough. I created an image instead of a looping, moving background video that looked similar enough to the effect I wanted to mimic in the original Sailor Moon anime. Instead of being completely rainbow, I made a colored gradient background, trying to omit red and blue in it. It wasn't quite what I was going for, but it turned out pretty good. So finally, after over 6 months of working on this project, the animation was complete. So there you have it, the completed animation. I think that this animation is probably my best work yet, across the almost 30 animations I've made on this channel. Now, even though I think it turned out good, was it worth it? Absolutely not! Especially since it postponed my return to YouTube by a lot. I'm never, ever making an animation like this again, where it's non-stop fluid animation, where every frame is a different image. Even though it looks great, my future animations won't be as ambitious as this project. However, I will say that even though part of me regrets taking on this time-consuming project, which included almost 500 frames of individual drawings, the other part of me is kinda glad I created it. Making a Sailor Moon transformation parody has been on my bucket list for a long time, probably since I first watched Sailor Moon as a kid. So hey, at least that's something checked off my bucket list. This animation also is pretty special to me, as it wasn't just to represent my change in personas from old to new, it also represents how I've grown and changed as a person in the last few years since I've been on YouTube. I'm a lot happier with myself now that I'm open about being bisexual, gender fluid, and even a furry, and it helped me love myself. So yeah, message to you viewer chans, embrace who you are and love yourself! It helped me a lot to embrace those parts of myself that I was embarrassed before, so yeah, try it out. it'll help you too. I hope you all enjoyed this animation, and thank you all for the support and patience on how long it took to create this. And hey, if this just happens to be your first exposure to my channel, welcome! Hello! If you're a weeb and gamer like me, like animations like this, as well as art-filled gaming videos, why not subscribe and stick around? At the time of posting this, I've got nearly 30 animations on my channel, which is on screen now, so check out that playlist if you're in the mood to binge some animations. I also have a playlist on screen of my other kind of art videos, which are my Speedpaints. And lastly on screen is a very special video. If you're down to watch Obama Maze the movie, where my friends and I try to escape a terrifying maze, there's that as well. So, with all of that out of the way, thank you all again for watching. I'm the Otaku Artist, and I'll see you all in the next video.